to the ultimate end user. That means material has to flow from the supplier to the person that will convert it. After conversion to a product, assuming you have made your packaging, you need to take it to someone who will use it to package his goods. So to understand supply chain and what could happen if there is a weak link in the chain, I want to watch this video.
When was the last time you went shopping? Did you notice some products were out of stock? When was the last time you tried ordering electronics? Did you face a delay in delivery? Why do you think that's happening? Because of China. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's called a supply chain crisis. Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay, and this is what is happening in the world right now. The United States is running out of Thanksgiving turkeys and Christmas trees. Australia does not have timber to build houses. Russia does not have marble beef and octopus in its restaurants. The UK is falling short of carbonated drinks. Car makers around the world are running out of chips. There is a shortage of toys, PlayStations and Nike shoes. Why? The problem started in China in the year 2020. The Wuhan virus spread through the country. Factories are forced to close. As early as February 2020, Harvard Business Review was predicting a mayhem. It said the most vulnerable companies are those that rely heavily or solely on factories in China. Well, turns out most companies do. You see, China produces 28.7% of the world's goods. It exports goods worth $2.6 trillion every year. From toys to cell phones to laptops, makeup, bridal gowns, China makes all of them. It has cheap labor, it has low taxes. So companies invariably outsource manufacturing to China. It is called the world's factory. But in 2020, China's factories shut down. It could not supply goods to its customers, who had just enough stock to last 15 to 30 days. Then they fell short of supplies. On the 14th of February 2020, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles announced it is temporarily halting production at a car manufacturing factory in Serbia because it cannot get parts from China. Hyundai had to stop plants in Korea because of quote-unquote disruptions in the supply of parts resulting from coronavirus outbreak in China. This virus soon spread, overwhelming one country after another. Factory workers became sick or had to quarantine. Production came to a halt. What happened next? A global supply chain crisis. And to understand this crisis, we must understand what a supply chain is. A supply chain is a network that helps in getting a product from point A to point B. So point A is the factory, the place where the product is made. Point B is the retailer, the place from where you buy the product. Now, getting a product from point A to point B sounds simple. It's not. Take your iPhone, for example. Where do you think it's made? China? Well, yes, it says it's made in China, but China is just one stop along the process. Your iPhone is basically assembled in China. Its parts, the parts that China assembles, come from around the world. 43 countries to be specific. So you could say your iPhone is made in 43 countries. The chips come from Taiwan, the DRAM comes from South Korea, the boxes your phones come in are from the Czech Republic. And you'll be surprised to learn that Apple does not even oversee this manufacturing process. Foxconn does. In short, a supply chain involves multiple players, tens of thousands of workers, several countries, multiple modes of transport. So one delay in one of the points on this chart, like a strike in the Czech Republic, can take the entire supply chain off course by days or months. Now, what happens if there is a crisis at several points of the supply chain? Say in Taiwan, factories are closed because of the Wuhan virus. South Korea's workers have been sent home due to a lockdown. In Czech Republic, truck drivers did not return to work. What happens then? The entire supply chain comes to a halt. It collapses. And this is exactly what was happening by mid-2020, going on to 2021. Demands were high, but supplies had stopped coming in. The United States ran out of ketchup. The United Kingdom ran out of milkshakes at McDonald's. Things got worse in the last few months when countries began reopening. People began going out again, making up for the year-long halt in shopping, checking things off their shopping list. They even began buying things that they wouldn't have bought had there not been work from home and social distancing, like on workstations, laptop tables, spare laptops, smartphones. Since the new normal needed people to spend more time indoors, they even began buying more homes and furniture to furnish those homes. While demand returned, supplies did not. Factories were still not working full scale. Not all workers had returned. Many remained unvaccinated. Many stranded on the wrong side of the border by closures. Transport workers were missing. So the market, you see, was not ready for this buying frenzy. The spike in demand first hit the shipping industry. 90% of the global trade happens via sea. The rise in demand led to the rise in the cost of shipping. It's simple economics. The more the demand, the more the price. Shipping prices rose 85.5% year on year, 85.5%. Consider the world's busiest route, China to US West Coast. The spot rate of last-minute bookings rose to $19,000. The average door-to-door shipping time for cargo went up by 70 days. And ports became overwhelmed with incoming vessels. As we speak, there are billions of dollars of goods stranded off the US coast, but there aren't enough resources to unload those supplies. With cargo containers stranded mid-sea, ports fell short of boxes. Who makes these boxes? The story comes back to China. It is October 2021, and the world needs more containers, but China's factories are closed again. In 2020, when the world needed masks and PPE kits, Chinese factories were closed because of the Wuhan virus. Now, when the world needs other supplies, Chinese factories are closing again, this time because of electricity shortage. China is running out of coal stock, prices have skyrocketed, and power plants are reluctant to buy more coal, so power supply has stopped to factories. Estimates say at least 44% of China's industrial activity has been affected by power cuts. The world's factory has stopped working for the second time in 2 years. You see, cheap labor is good, low taxes are good for business too. But what global supply chains need is reliability. 19 years ago, China was hit by a SARS epidemic. Back then, China accounted for 4.3% of the world's GDP. When the Wuhan virus hit, China accounted for 16% of the global GDP. It had grown fourfold, placed itself at the center of numerous supply chains, and set the stage for a supply chain collapse. Now, as India prepares for Diwali, many parents may not be able to give their children a toy of their choice. America will not have enough Christmas trees to light this December. In the United Kingdom, stores have already warned customers that come Christmas, stocks will be limited and discounts bare minimum. Our supply chains are collapsing. And to be fair, China alone is not to be blamed for this. Lack of alternatives, lack of prediction and preparedness. The virus from China closed factories, but the world suffered because it had not invested in alternatives. The virus from China sent the UK's drivers and farm labourers packing, but Britain paid the price for over-reliance on European labour. The virus from China put American workers out of jobs, but America's botched-up unemployment benefits are keeping them from returning to work. Supplies are running out because ports are not prepared to handle increased traffic. Australia is not being able to build houses because it does not have alternative timber sources. China is the story's villain, but it's not the only one. Look at Russia. It is gloating as the United Kingdom runs out of fuel and Europe runs out of gas. Over-dependence on any country is a bad idea. It leaves scope for weaponizing supply chains, arm-twisting nations. The supply chain crisis has taught us that it's time to rethink and re-evaluate global partnerships, create new alliances like the Quad, which aims to create alternative supply chains. It is also time to diversify global supply chains. Former US President Donald Trump had asked firms to move out of China. Japan is willing to pay firms to relocate back to Japan. Well, now is the time to remake those strategies. Also, the next time the world gives you Wuhan virus, be an India and aim for self-reliance. Don't be a US and run out of ketchup.
Video is just here to teach us what can happen when there are disruptions in supply chain. So if you don't have your raw materials readily available from wherever you are getting them from, you won't be able to make your packaging. So that is why supply chain is very important. So let's go back to the presentation. So for you to run a successful business, you need a reliable supply chain. What do I mean? You need to establish a relationship with your suppliers, not just opportunistic but stop buying items. There must be a relationship, there must be a partnership, and the links must be managed in such a way that there will be reliability and security of inputs. So it could be information, it could be inputs. Whatever you need to make your packaging, you must make sure that the sources are reliable and that they are secured. So this diagram is illustrating what a supply chain network is. If you look at it very well, you see that there's the upstream and there's the downstream. The upstream has to do with your raw material purchases, your component purchases, the conversion. After your packaging is converted and is ready for shipping, then the downstream takes place. Either it goes to the distribution centers or it goes to the warehouses and then to retailers. If it's a business-to-business establishment, you need to sell your packaging to maybe Nestle to be able to fill their beverages and sell it to the market. So in another illustration, you see this supply chain network. The manufacturer employs, contracts one supplier, and one supplier is now empowered to engage second-tier suppliers and third-tier suppliers to make sure inputs and materials are readily available for the supplier. In this kind of situation, there is a risk. The risk is that the manufacturer of the packaging needs to drill down to make sure that, especially if it's a food packaging company, that the food quality assurance practices, the ethical trading practices are working very well in both the third tier and the second tier suppliers. So it doesn't just have to measure the first tier supplier, it needs to go down to find out what is happening upstream. So after that, the manufacturer makes the items and then distribution takes place. And this is just an illustration of what the supply chain is all about. It's very simple, but it involves a lot of planning and a lot of evaluation. Please, let's go to the next slide. So from what we have seen, we should be able to identify what the upstream activities are, and then what the downstream activities are. In simple terms, the supply chain functions of any organization consist of the procurement or the inbound units, the materials and inventory planning, the manufacturing or the operations, stores and warehousing, and logistics. Logistics will mean distribution and sales orders management until it gets to the end user, that is the customer. Next slide, please. So, a network of supply chain. You just see that they are interrelated. No chain should break. Once one chain breaks, you won't be able to practice. You won't be able to produce your package. So all the chains will be interconnected and they must all be related. That means information and materials is flowing until it gets to the customer. So the upstream activities are already identified, the suppliers, the manufacturer, and then downstream until we get to the customer. Next slide, please. So the internal, some organizations view their establishments as an internal supply chain. What do I mean? It means that they manage their businesses as a whole. They regard it as the whole supply chain. What does that mean? That means that there are no silos. There is cross-functional flow of information and raw materials until the customer's need is fulfilled. So the flow of information and that resources within the organization must be cross-functional. It's not like functional. This suggests that there are suppliers and customers within the given organization. That means one unit is a customer or a supplier to the other unit. What does that mean? Assuming you are working in a packaging company and there is a procurement team, there's an operations team. Procurement serves the operations team. The operations team serves the distribution team. So it's a whole internal supply chain. And the procurement function is part of the internal supply chain. They serve by both internal suppliers and internal customers. Let's go ahead. The internal supply chain network of an organization can look like this. Looking at this, you see that there are support departments, the IT units, the business model, that is marketing, the supply chain finance and legal units, they all support the primary activity. The primary activity are linked together, the planning, the logistics, the procurement, in such a way that there is proper flow of information. Assuming that you are buying for resale, so the procurement activity is a primary function because you have to buy, make it available, and then you sell to your customers. Assuming you are buying materials for reprocessing or conversion into a finished packaging product, the procurement function, at times the supply chain support elements can be part of procurement, depending on the business that you are running. Let's go ahead. The integration and management of supply chain organizations and activities to cooperative organizational relationships, effective business processes, and high levels of information sharing to create high-value systems is what is called supply chain management. And the question is, why do we need to manage supply chain? We've seen what supply chain is. Why do we need to manage it? If we don't manage it, we won't have integration. If we manage it very well, we have better integration and management of resources. We will have enhanced cross-functional and non-directional flow of information. There will be collaborative relationships. And if you have collaborative relationships, that means you have partnerships with your suppliers, and suppliers will be able to give you priorities when there are supply disruptions in the market. So the supply chain management must make sure that he understands the market in such a way that he will know the suppliers to partner with, suppliers to maintain relationship with, so that he will have continuous flow of information and materials to the core business activities. And when we have supply chain managed in such a way, we see that our cost will be reduced, we will enhance value, and the organization will have competitive advantage. That means you'll be able to produce your packaging materials better than your competitors. And when you produce at less cost, with good features, you have competitive advantage because your customers will look for you. Even if your prices are a little higher than the others, but because you have distinct features and distinct attributes of the materials you produce, they will come looking for you. And that is why we need to manage the supply chain. Other quantities, there is reduced lead time in such a way that the materials will be available for the manufacturing operation. We do production planning. What does production planning involve? It involves S&OP processes whereby the demand comes in, is analyzed against production capacities. So the production planning team will be able to tell the organization that in the next 6 months, your capacity will not meet demand. Or that we have excess capacity, we want to go and look for customers who will make us utilize the capacity we have. So the planning functions involve these activities, and they are all part of supply chain function. How do we forecast demand? Demand forecasting is a very delicate issue because most times we see that the market is very erratic. It goes high and low. There's no steady demand. But there are some products that have steady demand all through the year. There are products that you need to monitor very well so that you'll be able to forecast demand accurately. And how do we forecast demand? We use trend projection. What is trend? Look at your history. Use history. What happened last year? What happened in the last 2 years to predict your future? And then you don't need to rely on history, because if you rely on history, you will fail. You also need to analyze what is happening today. And how do we get what is happening today and what will happen tomorrow? It's market data. You need to survey the market. You need to analyze the data that you get from the market. That means you need to do market surveys. You need to get information from the market. You need to kind of get first-hand information sorry, you will have demand feasibility. You don't have demand feasibility, it may lead to a lot of issues along the supply chain. Either you overstocked or you are understocked. The factory has to run. So the materials have to be focused in such a way that there's optimal flow. There is no overstocking. If you overstock, what happens? You tie down your working capital. If you understock, what happens? You run out of materials for production. Another way we can forecast demand is through econometrics. What is econometrics? You use statistical and mathematical models to determine demand. You use time series analysis. It's very cumbersome, so but most times and it involves a lot of technology and resources to be able to do that. So naturally, in Nigeria, what we do is to survey the market, research the market, and then use history to be able to predict what is going to happen tomorrow so that you don't run out of materials or you don't get to the stocks. If we don't forecast, if we don't do demand forecasting, what will happen? Then what we call bullwhip effect. You can take this. Let's go to the next slide. Bullwhip effect. You hold a long whip in your hand and you snap it. What happens? There's a wave, a spontaneous wave that is continuous, that goes along. So this is used to describe how small fluctuations in demand in the retail level can affect both the production process and the suppliers. Assuming a retailer that buys, let me say, this package, this chocolate milk, he buys 100 cartons every month. The next month, he buys 200 cartons. The wholesaler will say he has collected 200 cartons, that means demand has gone up. He will order material from the factory, 300 cartons. The factory will say 300 cartons is out. Let us order more raw materials. They will order raw materials for 400 cartons because they have to keep the safety stock. So the manufacturer has ordered 400 pieces of cartons from the supplier. The supplier will say, okay, the market is good, you go and order 500. And then the next month, the retailer comes and takes only 50. Only thing will happen. There will be stock of materials right from the distributor or the wholesaler is buying from down to the raw material supply. So in such a situation, there will be an issue. The issue will be that the demand has been forecasted wrongly. And because of that, there's a lot of stock along the line. And this leads to at times drop in price so that you'll be able to split out the raw materials you have. But what if the retailer comes and orders 50 today? Tomorrow, he didn't order. He waits for 2 months, accumulates the demand, and takes 400. The manufacturer wasn't prepared for it, was he? The supplier wasn't prepared for it. So there will be stock out in the factory. So that's what happened with bullwhip effect in the supply chain. So this phenomenon happens when we don't have accurate demand forecasting. We're not researching the market. We don't have demand visibility. We don't know what is happening in the environment we are operating. There's a video. I've been told that a link will be sent to your WhatsApp groups so you can watch it, understand what the bullwhip effect is if you watch that video. Let's go to the next slide. So, what causes bullwhip effect? Forecasting demand based on insufficient information. Lead times issues such as manufacturing delays. There are delays at the supplier's level, or there are delays at the support level because they didn't have trucks to move the trucks, to move the goods out. Let an optimal decision made by supply chain stakeholders at any point along the chain, for example, customer service or shipping. The decisions made were not accurate. The lack of communication and alignment between each link of stakeholder organization in the supply chain. Over or underreacting to demand expectations, such as ordering too many or not ordering enough. Customers often retailers waiting for order to build up before they place orders. This causes disruptions in the supply chain. Discounts, cost changes, and other price variations that disrupt regular buying patterns. At times, the customers are very sensitive. They react to price changes. Raw materials are going up, and you are looking for a way to pass the cost to the customers. And you increase by 10 naira, they shift to the alternative. So it will be an issue in the market. Inaccurate forecast from reliance on historical demand data to predict future demand. This is what causes bullwhip effect. How can we prevent this? We can only prevent this by forecasting demand accurately. It may not be easy to forecast demand accurately, but if we are researching the market, we'll be able to get up to 95% accuracy of demand, so you'll be able to keep your stocks at the optimum level. Now, I want to go to the procurement function as part of the supply chain function. Procurement function makes material available for the production process. How do they do this? By purchasing. Go to the supplier and buy. Hire. Can hire equipment. Can do a cost benefit analysis. Does it benefit me to hire or does it benefit me to procure? So it's not a situation. If you hire, procure, so far you have it available for use. You can lease, you can borrow. So procurement function reflects a more proactive role. You're proactive in such a way that you establish strategic relationships. You establish relational relationships that will help you to get materials when you need them. When you are in partnership, or when there is integrated growth between you and your suppliers, what happens? When there are supply issues in the market, you will know first. I'll tell you. You need to buy ahead. Because there are disruptions in the next 6 months, in the next 2 months, just like what is happening now. Raw materials are at high price in Nigeria. They are not available, especially chemicals, because of the coronavirus and other issues along the supply chain. So, the procurement function is not just going out there to buy. It means the relationships with the suppliers are maintained and measured. There are strategic integrated role of the suppliers. Most times, the people in the factory need to inform the buyers early, so that they'll be able to, if there are new products, so that they'll be able to involve the suppliers early enough, so that you get the best. You get the best solutions, you get the best technology, so that you'll be able to have flow of information and inputs to your production process. So the scope of the procurement function includes buying goods, tangible goods, can be services, you can procure a service. You don't see it, but you feel that the service has been done. As you will come in here and this place is very dirty, you feel comfortable. Somebody has cleaned it up, so it's a service. Construction and building and equipment are also bought in to serve the manufacturing process. So we have 2 types of procurement in the manufacturing process. Direct procurement. These ones are converted to finished goods and sold to the customers. Or, if you are doing buying and selling, they are bought in materials that are sold to your customers. While indirect procurements are ancillaries, consumables, IT materials, toner to print your materials. These are ancillaries. The direct procurement adds to the cost of what you are producing or what you are selling. While the ancillaries are indirect, they are not converted into raw materials. But that value chain, it kind of describes direct procurement and indirect procurement. It talks about the secondary activities and the primary activities. So the primary activities are the activities involved in the production process that involves acquiring the raw materials and then sending them to the customer. While the support activities involve special IT, procurement at times depending on what business is, and the infrastructure that you have that houses the resources that you have for production process. Next slide, please. So we have non-stock items. Non-stock items are expense immediately they reach the factory. Basically, they come into your production process, they are expense. They are not part of the thing that adds to the final product. While the stock items are purchased and stored in the warehouse before they are needed in the production process. To minimize stock holding, a number of techniques have been managed in stock procurement. We either use economic order quantities. You need to determine the economic order or the minimum order quantity that you need to bring in that will serve as the optimal stock. Use demand forecasting. When you use demand forecasting, that means you need to know what the demand is tomorrow. So you bring in the material today so you can convert them and sell tomorrow. You can use vendor managed inventory. This system works very well, especially when there is high usage materials. You don't want to hold stock of this high usage material. What do? You contract it out to a vendor who will hold it for you and give you what you need when you need it. So you just be available just in time. You can also use management information system like enterprise resource planning, material resource planning to make sure your stocks are at optimal level. Please, next slide. The overall operational objective of procurement is to deliver information and inputs of the right quantity, delivered at the right quantity to the right place at the right time for the right price. So most times, this is what procurement is measured on. Is inputs of the right quality, are they delivered at the right quantity? Are they delivered where we need it? Are they available at the time we need it? Are they for the best price? So once you're able to achieve these 5 points, then you've done your job as a procurement manager. But most times, it's difficult to achieve all this. So you have to choose what best works for your organization. There is a situation whereby the supplier, the lead time is short. Once you call the supplier, but if you come to the factory, there are quality issues, and his price is very good. Would you stick to that supplier? No. You can go to a supplier that his price is a little more than the other supplier, but the quality is what? Right. But the quality is of the essence. And time is also of the essence. If you deliver on time, the quality is not right. You've not done your job. Because most times, it will be taken back to the supplier. So, you need to find out what best works for your manufacturing process. You need templates, and the templates are not at the right thickness. You want to manufacture things and they're not at the right thickness. What happens? You cannot use it. It has to go back. So you have to find suppliers who will deliver optimum value to your organization. Next slide. What is added value? This is the worth of the product or service. It can be measured in 2 ways. What it costs the organization to provide it, or what the customers are willing to pay for it. An organization creates value by performing its activities more competitively, or more efficiently, or more effectively than its competitors. The supply chain function and the procurement function plays a big role in creating value. How does the procurement function create value? Look at that from what we have discussed. How can the procurement function create value? The question is, the slide said the supply chain function and the procurement function plays a big role in creating value. How does the supply chain function do this?
They help the organization to do their planning. They help with planning by, in terms of demand and focus.
Thank you so much. Because if the focus is not right, you can run out of materials. If the focus is not right, you can get overstocked and buy down capitals that should have been converted to money. That's very correct. The pricing also, you need to deliver the best prices to your organization, the best value.
It will affect the packaging material and the consumer will pay more.
Yeah, the consumer will pay more. If the prices are so high, the consumer will pay more. If the quality is bad, the consumer will also pay more because the cost of rework is higher than the cost of getting it right at the first time. So the quality must be right for for you to get it right at the first time. Next slide. So the general objective of the procurement function is to manage internal customers. They ascertain and satisfy the input needs, giving advice on best available inputs, the best technologies available, and the best sources of the materials at the right prices. They manage the risk for the organization. How? They make sure there is no supply disruption and no supply failures. Just like the video we watched at the beginning. Because of what happened in China, there's a lot of issues all over the world. A lot of the shipping prices has gone up to 85.5% according to what we saw in the video. They manage costs. They keep costs reasonable. They manage relationships and reputational management. How do they manage reputational management? Assuming your organization employ ethical trading. Ethical trading means workers will not be underpaid. Workers that be fair pays for fair job done. There are no excessive overtime. And you go and bring in a supplier who does not treat his workers well. And the workers are on strike. You won't get your inputs. And when people outside knows that you are buying Nestle or Nampak is buying from this customer that is maltreating their workers, it brings bad reputation. So the procurement function must make sure that they manage all stakeholders in such a way that the organization are portrayed in good light. So that's what the procurement function does. Next slide, please. Good corporate governance in procurement. These are policies and rules and processes, structures within the organization, which ensures that the organization adheres to acceptable ethical standards, laws, and regulations. Today, people are more environmental conscious. How do we impact the environment? Do you make sure that all the stakeholders are okay with what you are doing, with your activities? So procurement of professionals are in a good position of trust within a business. They are stewards. They manage the organization's resources. So good governance must ensure that these resources are managed well. How are they managed well? Through procedures, through policies, through structures. There must be paper trail of all procurement activities in such a way that when it's called upon, you present it. The standing, the credibility and trust of any profession. That means that the employing organization can be damaged by fraud or other forms of unethical conduct. So the procurement function must make sure the credibility of the organization they are representing are intact, well managed. And then the procurement profession, the CIPS frowns at fraud. So if you are found unworthy, you're disciplined. So the procurement function makes sure that the rules, policies, and processes and structures within the organization are managed in such a way to adhere to these ethical standards, laws of the land, and regulations. So key principles of business ethics in supply chain: provision of fair and accurate, truthful information. That means the information you are making available, assuming you have 3 or 4 suppliers, the information must be to the 4 suppliers at the same time. If one gets it before the other, it has an advantage over the others. So the information you must provide, you are providing must be fair, accurate, and truthful. You also must make sure that there are confidentiality rules. When you are sharing information with suppliers, they must sign non-disclosure agreement to make sure that the information they obtain from you will not go out. Assuming you are doing a new product and you engage with your competitors before you even launch the product, that will be very bad, be a disaster. So we don't accept or give inducements to get contracts. Individuals should not make decisions based on personal gain. So this must be short with supply chain practice. Next slide. Now I want to move over to international supply chain. This applies that you source globally, imports and exports. In Nigeria, I don't know how much things we make. Where I work, we import 95% of all the materials we use. So international trade is very important in Nigeria. We will see what we can do in our generation to see whether we can change the culture. So let's go to the next slide. Let's see what is involved in international trade. The argument favoring international trade, local economic activities. When people import from there, because what happens? There is productivity, there is outputs, because we want to sell. There is demand from outside. Improves human rights and labor conditions in developing countries. There are more product choice and competitive pricing available, and improve relations among countries. That's why you see a president traveling for trade conferences, asking people to come and invest in Nigeria. Arguments against international success encourages the exploitation of labor from developing nations. Almost all the multinationals have factories in China. Why? Because of cheap labor. So there may be labor exploitation. Care is not taken. Because of employment in developed nations, squeezes small domestic suppliers out of supply market. There are small suppliers in Nigeria that will be squeezed out of the market because you get products from abroad cheaper than is made in Nigeria because of our power situation. Next slide. Documentations for imports. Assuming you want to import into Nigeria, the exporter side must provide you with a pro forma invoice. You now use the pro forma invoice to get your insurance. From your insurance, you apply for your Form M. Then you get for your Form M, you send it to the person exporting to you, and he'll be able to arrange for shipping and send you a bill of lading or airway bill if it's air freight. Packing list, a sales invoice or commercial invoice, the certificate of origin or certification of value, and product certificate, ensuring that the product is made in the country where it's coming from. From the importer side, depending on the trade agreement, you get your insurance, you get your Form M, you get your NAFDAC certificate, you get your SON card, depending on the product you want to import. Next slide. In international trade, we use what we call incoterms. What are incoterms? These are contractual conditions or terms that are adopted into international trade. The Incoterm 2010 specified the obligation of the buyer and the seller in the following areas: where the delivery should be made, who insures, what level of insurance is required, who raises particular documents at times, then do the importer takes ownership. Is he at the shipper's port or at the importer's port? So these are the things, the Incoterms specify. Let's go to the next slide. So there are four groups of Incoterms. The E-terms, where the seller's duty is to make goods available at its own premises for the day free of charge. Not exports, sorry. Exports. I've produced your goods, come and take it. The F-term, the seller will take care of all pre-carried duties, but the main carriage arrangement is the responsibility of the buyer. The Z-terms, the seller arranges for carriage of the goods, but once they are dispatched, he has done his job. The G-term, the seller's responsibility is sent to delivery to the specified destination. The seller is liable for damage or loss in transit, insurance, and so on. Let's now look at some of the agreements available. Next slide. The Incoterm summary: exports, nameplates, maybe the supplier's faction. FCA, free carriage. Name the place. Please ship it to my port, the port of destination. Free alongside shipping. Name the port of shipment. Free of board. Name the port of shipment. Cost and freight. Most times in Nigeria, where I work, we use CFR, cost and freight. So that means the person who have the supplier is responsible to make the goods available, arrange shipping, and then give us the bill of value, which we say it is a live report. There are so many other summaries that we can check. At times we also use DA, deliver at the place. Most times, F-phrase, you ask the supplier, please deliver it to my warehouse. And the cost will involve the cost of insurance, the cost of shipping, and the cost of material. So, do we have any questions? Yeah.
You can do better than that, eh? There's quite a number of questions I've seen online. So, Mr. Engineer Bright, you've done justice to the topic. Any questions from here?
Hello, Engineer. We have global crisis of data as in supply, as in procurement. What will we have done different to advance this situation?
Thank you. That's a nice question. Now we talked about forecasting, demand visibility. We also talked about securing supply. So, do you have strategic relationship with your supplier? If you do, we would have told you in advance several months ago, look at what we are going to face. How do we solve the problem? In my factory, what we did is we paid for templates for 1 year. So the supplier has our money, so we must make sure we deliver the materials. He has your money already, he must deliver. So demand visibility, forecasting must be right, and then you must know what you need. And your relationship with your suppliers to make them give you priority, and there are supply disruptions.
Thank you, sir. Now, my questions is about the customer survey. Like when trying to forecasting technique, you talk of market data, customer survey, and obtaining data. Now, my question goes like in terms of the person holding the role, like you said, that it can have a very serious effect on the forecasting. Now, my question now is that in this era of social media, talking the customer side, the end consumer, like the end user, sorry, like this social media era now, that just ordinary a person on social media, on a click of his hand, do you understand, can actually change the demand for a product. For example, what's it called? This kind of drink. Everybody can just click something that this drink is poisonous, and the next thing it does is that customer will stop buying it. How do you manage that kind of do effects? Because that one is the end user, not used directly to the supplier. Thank you.
That one is that's a very good question. This has to do with customers' response.
It's called market reaction.
It's marketing. It's marketing reaction.
Yeah.
How would I put it? It has to do with how effectively the marketing department is promoting the material, the item involved. So, if there are damaging information out there, so the company has to do what is required to put the right information across. And the right information is passed across. The consumers will also have a second thought and look at what the demand is or the product is. So it can cause a lot of issues if there are things like that. I've seen a situation where somebody posted that this particular item is causing high blood pressure. So the company has to take urgent and strategic measures to make sure they communicate. communication from the marketing department. That's what we're
You still want? Okay.
Okay. That one can cause a ripple effect on the forecasting. The supply, as a supply chain tool, for example. Now, my own point is that you have other materials. I get you. You have a lot of stock in-house. And there are issues with with the market concerning that product. Now, it will have a ripple effect on your own forecasting. Because to some extent, something like NAFDAC or other regulatory body can shut down the factory for manufacturing product, maybe for 1 month or 2 months. Now, is there a constant when it comes to supply chain or procuring that what's it called, raw material for that for the product? Is there a constant in place, like trying to manage the blue whip effect? Like, these are unforeseen circumstances that may happen from the market. Is there a constant to control that?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. What you can do is, if you have good relationship with your suppliers, they can keep some delay shipping. They can delay shipping. What you have already, you cannot throw it away. So you have to find a way to manage it and be able to sell to the market. But if you are shut down, it becomes another issue. That means something is wrong with your manufacturing. Either you are not keeping up to standard, or you have used expired materials to produce. So in food safety environments, expired materials are not allowed. Quality are maintained at the utmost level. Once an item is not right, it's not right, it cannot be used. If it happens like that, then you have to manage backwards to the upstream and see whether you can stop some supplies while you manage what you have in the warehouse.
As an research, I have to put to them. As based on other functions that I mentioned up procurement, you can still look at leasing. For example, you have a competitor who also goes into the same category of product, and you are struggling, and you know it's going to expire, or you have total loss of it. You can actually go into leasing or borrowing to other competitors.
Yeah, you can sell to your competitors. But like you said to your competitors, you were empowering them.
No, you
sell
to lose.
Yeah. At times you take a knock to be able to survive. That's how the market is.
Then, sir, in a worst case, if you don't have any need for that material again, and you feel that it will be a total loss to you, you can sell at a discounted rate so that you don't make the total. Yeah.
That's not selling the market.